And we're live.
Hello. La, la, la. Hello, all. Welcome. It is Thursday, December 14th, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter. Is there anything good to talk about?
I don't know. Like, you're just giving me this. I was just telling Peter, I spend my days looking at Instagram, which consists of puppies, Australian firefighters, and genocide. It's,
yeah, that genocide part really.
It really is quite the killjoy in my Instagram feed. But I've been so inundated with just stuff that I've been reading and watching and learning and just trying to get as knowledgeable as I can on a lot of stuff going on. So there are apparently some current events to which I am not privy.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things going on right now, but unfortunately, we are stuck in a myriad of quagmires left and right, and the President of the United States is only making it worse. For those of you who've been paying attention, and yes, you don't like my music, we agree. The Republicans in Congress who are blocking aid to Ukraine are not doing it for humanitarian reasons.
Of course not. They want their border wall.
Yeah, they want their money. They want all that stuff.
No. They would just rather allocate their money towards the border wall and then potentially going after China. You know what I mean? Like they just, we have no delusion about any of that.
What never gets stated is the reason why this type of a story is happening. And all too often, we see what's happening right now in Gaza, but we cannot forget that there is endless war in Ukraine and Russia, which should never have happened in the first place.
Well, it's not really in Russia.
Well, no, it's in Ukraine, sure. But it's something that never should have happened in the first place. And yet, hundreds of billions and billions of dollars have been spent on something where innocent people are being killed left and right. We always knew how this was going to end. And for the most part, it looks like Putin and Russia have obtained what they set out.
It's interesting that you say how much money has been spent, because to me, I look at it and I'm like, oh my God, how much money they made. And really, Russia's getting exactly what it wanted in the first place. All of this could have been avoided. And yet they made so much money. In fact, our rep made a significant ROI on the Russia invasion into Ukraine. So, I mean, like, a lot of this, what you look at how much was spent, like they made a fortune.
They did. And now you're going to find out how much more of a fortune they think they're going to make, because apparently Zelensky and Biden still think that there is a war to be won here.
Oh my God.
Well, we will let them explain to you exactly why that is the case.
Congress needs to pass a supplemental funding for Ukraine before they break the holiday recess, before they give Putin the greatest Christmas gift they could possibly give him. And so because we've seen what happens when dictators don't pay the price for the damage and the death and the destruction they cause, and they keep going when no price is paid. The threats to America, to Europe, and the world will only keep rising if we don't act. And I intend that we act.
Our goals for 24 are clear. Take away Russia's superiority and disrupt their offensive operations. And I think it's real. And also some other important things. I met with the heads of American defense companies yesterday. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Really powerful companies. I thank them and thanks all the workers, engineers, managers who built the strengths of American weapons, helping Ukraine boost the development of arsenals of democracy.
And it's the picture as much as anything that you are seeing right now that matters for him. He has the Republican minority leader, Mitch McConnell, at one side, the Senate Democratic majority leader, Chuck Schumer, at the other. This is very intentional. This was meant to show the bipartisan support in the U.S. Senate.
What we need and where you already helped us. That's why I want to thank you, all of you and your partners. And of course, please pass from me messages to your workers, people who really work, and they did a lot for Ukraine. Just as we are facing to this war, as unprovoked war, and we understand that without such people, companies, and such workers, and we really couldn't manage and save our land. And we are very thankful that we have such friends.
Yeah.
The thing that he said,
The maudlin music.
that's not even it.
The maudlin music.
You can say the music, which is ridiculous, but the real issue here, probably more than anything else, is when he said, and I met with the defense contractors. It's like, dude, you're giving away the game.
That's the whole
Like,
point.
you're just saying what's really going on here is that this is a military industrial complex, money grab. What else is it? You're out there saying, oh, we're going to totally give Putin his biggest Christmas present ever.
Yeah,
It's
he got exactly what he wanted. He got exactly what he wanted. And I don't know what the numbers are on the Russian side in terms of like death and casualty and damage or anything. I don't know of it. So I can't comment on that.
They have definitely, without question, there has been a lot of people that have been killed on both sides, but the Ukrainian people have been slaughtered in such a way that could have been avoided.
Oh,
And
yeah, the whole thing could have been avoided, but it wouldn't have been as profitable.
But therein lies the rub. Just go along.
All right.
Remember to smash that like button, share and subscribe, and do all those wonderful things we ask you to do. And again, yes, he is Scary Bird, and he'll be here very shortly. Welcome to the channel, No, we have very rational change here on this channel.
Why? Why would someone say irrational?
Some people have to say things that they make them feel good.
I actually pride myself on the use of reason for most things.
But that therein lies where you're talking about reason.
I am very pragmatic and very logical.
If you're pragmatic and logical and you're looking at what's happening right now in Ukraine, and you can't see that all you're doing is leading more and more people to slaughter that can be completely avoided. But this is the whole thing about the military industrial complex. It's not about human life. It's about profit and resources.
It's shareholders.
And yet still thinking that this is something that they can accomplish at this point. What are you hoping to accomplish?
Forever war. I mean, the whole point is there's always going to be a war. There always will be something wherein the MIC is churning significant profit. So if one thing seems to be getting resolved or is dying down, then you better believe something's going to happen somewhere else. There's going to be some type of red flag manufacturing consent situation to justify however many more, trillions you could put into killing people.
Are we libertarians, Jen?
Okay, so I'm not big on labels. I wouldn't say I'm libertarian. I don't know. I mean, Luke Radowski thinks I'm an anarcho-communist. So, it's interesting.
Well, that's coming from Luke. But then again, Luke would be considered a libertarian. So,
But no, I'm a very civil libertarian. I truly believe that it is not the government's job to patrol and police behavior of consenting adults. I don't have any problem with what consenting adults do.
well,
I support all of the amendments, including the second, which much to the dismay of some of the people on my left in other respects. And then where I fall on social issues is I'm pretty much a bleeding heart, think that we should be inviting in the people coming across the border and offering them like meals and dorms. So, I am never going to agree with things that are not in the best interest of general human rights.
I definitely agree with that. And therein lies where you talk about the humanity. Sometimes you have to recognize that you have to either cut your losses or you have to change policy. And our policy is to expand the military reach as far and wide as possible. Just
No, that's not our policy.
Well, no, that's not our policy. No.
Our
we are very
policy
much,
is to oppose that.
Yes, very much anti-war, and war is only absolutely necessary if you are the ones who are being invaded. And in this case, we as a country always manage to find a way to get involved with everybody else's business.
Which is why I think this is why it is so easy to manufacture consent here, because we never see anything happen here. We don't have conscription service. We don't have really anybody that has any skin in the game that's making the rules to send our, basically our poor and more vulnerable communities and children in those communities off to wars.
Well, let's hear what our esteemed guest has to say, because he's got a lot to say. He is one of many noted streamers.
See, maybe he should come for the Festivus to air grievances.
That would be probably a lot of fun to do, and we'll see if that even comes about. If you liked, seeing and listening to Vosh on our channel, you are going to love LonerBox. Welcome to Generational Change.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hi. So what's your real name?
Well, first name's Loner. First name's Loner, and my second name's Box.
Okay. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks. Just finished the stream, and now I'm on with you guys. So
excellent. And where are you? Where are you located?
Scotland.
Oh, I do like me a Scotsman.
As somebody who is part Irish, I would very much like to
Please don't do the accent.
I'm not going to do the accent. I'm just saying that I would like to get to that part of the world. Very much so.
Yeah.
Loner, how long have you been doing streams, and what's sort of, I guess, like the basic origin story to share with our audience?
What's the inspiration?
I first started watching because I'm like 32 years old. So when I started watching political content as a teenager, the only things really going around were like academics, like David Harvey or Zizek and all these kind of like famous lefty guys. And then at some point, I noticed that there were kind of more DIY people who were not like academics necessarily, but just like creators doing political content. So I first found out about ContraPoints and H Bomber Guy and Sean and all those people. Yeah. And then streamers like Destiny or Vosh. And I just realized, I thought this is actually something I want to do. Because at the time I was working as a musician, which was great. I was doing lots of different jobs and teaching and producing and playing gigs and things like that. But I always thought like politics was always a little bit more interesting to me. I was just more, like I seemed to reach a point where I would like play a gig and I would prefer finishing and then arguing with the boss about like the British elections, you know? So I just thought this is maybe more my calling. So then I eventually started making video essays, then started streaming, and yeah, here we are.
So basically what you're saying is you're a Scottish musician and you found politics interesting. That's what you're saying. That's fascinating to me. Like I like, to me, there's nothing cooler than being a musician. I birthed one. I created one. It's the greatest thing I've ever done. I think it's a very cool thing. Oh yeah. Well, yeah, my son plays piano. So he was pointing that you have a keyboard behind you.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, we have politics in Scotland as well. So,
I understand.
And,
just our politics. But
I guess now it's like even when I started teaching kids music, I noticed that guitar had gone out of fashion massively when I was kind of like at my peak with working in music, which made things really difficult because there was no School of Rock or any films like that inspired kids to play guitar. But what all the kids wanted to do was become YouTubers. So I was like, which is funny now that it's like the more cool thing to be as a kid as a YouTuber than a musician, right?
That's kind of. Yeah, I'm so glad I'm Gen X. We saw all the cool bands live.
Yeah.
But so what, I mean, I see that some of your people that are coming onto the chat are wanting to know who we are, whether we're like, oh, are these two libertarians? Or these two, like, what are you?
Well, tell them who we are. Then.
Who are we? So, but I'm just curious, like, so what is your slant and who does your audience tend to be in terms of your politics? And is it more based in UK, or is it like more global politics that you talk about?
It really varies. I used to talk about UK politics quite a lot when I started my channel, but then moved over to doing debate panels, which always meant that I had to be updated on what was happening with Trump or US elections. I got into that.
That's really terrible. I'm sorry you have to follow me all the time. It's really
the amount of terms I have to learn. I have to learn about like Speaker of the House and substantive due process and all. Oh God, it's mind-numbing. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot more entertaining for sure. Parts of it, like, you know, we don't really have prime ministers who are facing court charges and going to jail and things like that. So, well,
that's just boring. You know, that's just boring over there. You guys don't have. But you know the Tabernacle by any chance? You know the Tabernacle?
Yeah.
He's a friend.
Yeah. So where are you, like, in terms of our politics then? Like, what are your thoughts? Okay, other than the obvious that obviously there is something so seriously wrong with us. Like, where are your thoughts on politically where we are? How about us?
Honestly, I haven't seen all that much, so I don't know, but I'd imagine I'm probably a bit less to the left than you guys are. I used to start by making like quite left-leaning content, mostly like exclusively talking about intersectionality and stuff like that. And then it eventually moved on to, I don't know, like, I don't really feel like I align with any particular camp at the moment, especially online.
Same.
Definitely much further left than any like anyone I know in real life usually.
Same.
But I guess when you come online, the Overton window can go pretty far. So I think right now, yeah, I'm like pretty left leaning, although my community is very mixed because I have no problem attacking people who generally agree with me and stuff as well. I have no problem being quite like I guess like my role. Generally, what I'm better at anyway is more like destructive than constructive. So I'm a lot better at responding to people who I think are saying dumb things and saying why than I am of just offering a positive thing of my own, which I don't mind. I kind of enjoy doing that. So I might as well do what I'm better at. But that also means while you got quite popular off of attacking right-wingers, when I turn my direction, my sights to the left, then obviously that some people in the audience don't want that, so they leave, but then other people come in. So yeah, I've got quite a diverse mix in the community now. Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like you're like us. We pretty much bash both sides equally. To me, they're not even sides, but we just both wings of the corporate America. We bash them fairly equally because the truth is they're all the same.
Well, you know, as a fellow millennial, how do you see it from the perspective of an audience grab? Because you obviously have a sizable following, and you know we've commiserated, if you will, with other big streamers. And, you know, there are those who just kind of have this idea that, look, I'm going to be me and I'm going to say what I'm going to say. But then there are others who basically just want to placate to their audience and never let them feel like they're being challenged in any way. How do you see it in terms of, you know, our current generation and how we kind of feel the need to, for the most part, be stuck in an echo chamber, and we really don't want to play in that type of sandbox where we're just constantly talking about, you know, the same group of people and constantly pointing the finger at them is the reason why there's a problem here, when in reality, it's the systems, especially in our country, is the real problem. And that's going to lead to situations where, you know, we may say things about people that you apparently like, but, you know, they're deserving of that criticism.
I guess there are pros and cons to it. The cons are that once you start going, and usually what I find happens is people say that they really like your content and they really like your thought process and all this, like your arguments and all that, when you're attacking someone that they don't like. But then as soon as, but I feel like everyone who does that, like, has a bit of a deal breaker somewhere. So if it's not really predictable where you're going to stand on a particular issue after you've done your research and all that kind of stuff, then it's, yeah, you can bleed people off quite easily. Whereas if you are a partisan channel, then people know what to expect. So it's a bit safer. But I guess the pro of doing it, I guess the way I do it is I don't ever have to commit to a position that is wrong, or I don't ever have to like find myself taking a position just because I was expected to. Because I think it must be the case, I imagine, for other creators. Maybe I don't know how they do it, but I've seen this happen. Is when a story will break out, and I know what X channel is going to say about it before they said it. They say it, and you can tell that they probably just thought like, well, I know what I'm going to say about this as well. It's all just like, and it's all quite surface level, and I don't really ever fall into that trap, which is I kind of appreciate.
Yeah, I appreciate that too. We tend here to also do things a little bit different and talk about issues a little bit deeper and go into things a little bit off of just whatever beyond just the day's headlines. And I think that the labels and the parties is just totally destructive. I actually love the idea of having no political parties. That's sort of my own little personal fantasy. But, here, what we consider to be the left is at best left of center, right? Like at best, that's our left here is left of center. And it's very difficult for me because as I get older, I'm getting further and further to the left. Like I'm almost wrapping around to the right, but and it's very difficult. But where do you see us in compared to what's going on over in the UK right now? Because I know that there's issues everywhere in terms of like this sort of right-wing push that's happening, and labor is definitely uprising here. What's going on over there in terms of like real like leftist movement?
Obviously, we had Jeremy Corbyn, which ended up being a total failure. I mean, there was a promising result in 2017, but by the time you get to 2019, and especially riding off of Brexit, like Boris Johnson just made sure there was no chance of that happening. We had, I think, the worst Labour defeat since 1935. So I don't think there's any bouncing back from that anytime soon as far as the left goes. There are still some parts of Corbyn's platform that have stayed with Keir Starmer's party. A lot of people don't know that, but there are some parts that just kind of have quietly remained on the website and on the manifesto. So not the manifesto, but the party platform. But at least optically and on the surface, he seems to have made every effort to make sure that no one sees him as the far left guy, right? To the point that it seemed to be the case that the ex-Conservative Prime Minister, David Cameron, had a position on Israel and Palestine on the war that seemed to be rhetorically more sympathetic to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza than the Labour leader was, because the Labour leader didn't want to basically make himself look anything like Corbyn, who had the reputation of being like almost like Hamas or Hezbollah leaning. So Labour are very, very, very far ahead in the polls. I don't know. Unions, I think, are stronger now than they were when Tony Blair won, I think. And that kind of stuff is a bit more popular. But I don't know exactly where it's going to go if he comes in. Labour are guaranteed to win, I think, but I don't know if it's going to be significantly more left-wing than Conservatives. It will be more left-wing, but maybe that's not massively.
Yeah, at least you guys have a Labour Party. We don't even have a Labour Party. You say we're supporters of the status quo and generally oppose anything that upsets. Actually, no. I actually support everything and all things that upset the balance. I said Trump will facilitate the revolution. I didn't vote for him, but I sure as hell didn't vote for Hillary either. So, no, we are not those people.
What did you do in 2020?
What did I do in 2020? I did, unfortunately, vote for Joe Biden.
No. That's not what I'm talking about. What did you do in 2020? People don't know you.
Yeah. I ran for Congress in 2020. So for people who are familiar with our politics, I challenged Debbie Wasserman Schultz in the primary in Florida's, at the time it was the 23rd district. So in running for Congress, we developed like a sizable following and a platform based on the fact that she is very loathed. And so a lot of people became aware of us and were supportive. And so we turned that into this podcast because we just, it's long form interviews. We're trying to just spread as much information as possible. And our goal is to transform politics into service. We actually think that those people are supposed to work for us. And that I'm just so tired of them being as entitled as they are. So that was really what our message is and what we do. But no, I am most definitely not status quo. That's just, I don't get that at all. Like I'm the person that if someone came to me and showed me a really good strategy for open borders, I'd be like, oh, okay, let's talk about that. I'm very flexible. I care about things that help people. That's it. I don't have any, I'm not fixated on any policy.
Loner, what is it about Jeremy Corbyn that you don't like? I mean, from an American perspective, I just like, I'm in support of the labor movement. Especially here in the States, we do not have the type of things that you have in the UK. everything is subjective depending on your current circumstance. But here in this country, we don't have universal education. We do not have universal health care. We do not have anything close to a living wage. So we have a lot of problems economically, and the labor movement has been growing leaps and bounds over the past, I would say, probably 2 years. But obviously, things have really come to a head with the UAW and what they've been able to accomplish. What is it about Jeremy Corbyn, from your perspective, and perhaps the Labour Party as a whole, that you see as a political negative, if you will, if that makes sense?
The thing I didn't like about Corbyn was his foreign policy above everything else. I think his foreign policy is pretty awful. And his domestic policy I was more in line with. I thought like his wanting to advance worker cooperatives, I think, was like a really good idea that sadly he didn't even really push that hard. So I think I also didn't like him as a campaigner because he had really good ideas, but they didn't really present anything. It just seemed like they were just vomiting out progressive economic ideas, all of which were probably you could have defended on their own. But when you were throwing out 10 at once, it just looked kind of confusing. Whereas Boris Johnson was saying, here's Brexit, we're going to get it done. It's like, okay, of course, like, this other guy is going to simplify things. It's going to work on the average voter. With the Labour Party now, I don't really know because it's hard to say what exactly they're going for. I feel like I've been told by one person that their strategy is just to wait until the election and then let people know where they stand on most things. But as for where they are now, it just seems to be that they are very, very carefully trying to avoid reminding anyone of Corbyn because of how bad that result was.
Do you feel that, I mean, again, we'll obviously get into Israel-Palestine. Do you see anything that Corbyn was saying at the time? Because, of course, one of the things that is very commonplace in politics in the States that I think is probably very similar in the UK and in probably Europe overall is this, when the establishment decides that they don't like you or they don't want you having any influence over political discourse, what they will do is label you and as, absolutely, nefarious way possible, you're untrustworthy, or you're, in this case of Jeremy Corbyn, he's an anti-Semite, and he's going to wreck the entire British economy and all that stuff. How do you see, from your perspective, if there was any validity to what was said about him in terms of his rhetoric? I mean, I heard some of the things that he said. Wouldn't say I agreed with everything that he said, but, some of it I also thought was overblown.
As for him himself, I think you can probably put a lot of it down to either just not knowing or being like naive or ignorant. But like, it didn't look very good when he was like describing Hamas and Hezbollah as friends when he was talking with them, and it didn't help that. I guess there was just this very permissive attitude from people around him over the idea that Israel's going to be abolished and decolonized and all this like very vague language. And I think I wasn't very aware of this at the time because I wasn't really in online politics. But when I started to look at the kind of crowds who say stuff like that, the stuff that they mean when they talk about like abolishing Israel is like, it's pretty obscene. It's like deporting all the Israelis and all that kind of like crazy stuff. And it felt like a lot of that stuff was bubbling underneath the surface, and Corbyn just wasn't addressing it, or either wasn't aware of it, or because I think the problem is that leftists, if they are engaging in what you might call left-wing anti-Semitism, is they're not doing it because of traditional anti-Semitism. They're not doing it because they believe in Jewish conspiracies, or if they believe in the protocols, or if they believe in like blood libel or any of the stuff that right-wingers believe, or like control of the media. They do it because they see themselves as anti-Zionist. But then the problem is that if you can become so anti-Zionist and anti, I guess, like countries that are backed by the West, that you end up covering for people who are insanely anti-Semitic, like Hamas or Hezbollah or Iran, right? And I think that was maybe what happened with Corbyn, was there was just an incredible blind spot on that issue.
I definitely, I don't know how that happened. I guess I hit that by accident. I definitely agree that, but herein lies the real problem, and this is the thing about being a successful streamer. So many people really lack the ability to do nuance. We have talked at length, this particular issue for you, Jen, in particular, when it comes to Israel-Palestine, is it's very serious. And there is conflating constantly about what people mean, what they intend to mean, and all the while we're looking at a very real situation here where there is an attempted genocide of the Palestinian people. And right now, they're being very successful at it, not just with the indiscriminate bombing, not just with now what's being reported as constant assassination, gunning down of individuals left and right. But there's also the issue of disease, famine. All these things are going to result because people have been displaced. Their supplies, particularly food and water, are contaminated. And all the while, I'm looking around thinking, well, if you're going to do that, how do you think people are going to react to the Jewish community who are screaming from the, and let's be very clear, there is a huge difference between Zionism and Judaism, and people try to conflate those two things together. And the Zionist community are constantly talking about their fear, they're going to come and hurt us. And yet all the while, they're the ones that are, just completely killing everybody.
It's a preemptive genocide. It's a preemptive genocide. That's what it is. We're going to genocide them because we're scared that that's what they're going to do to us. And that's really what it comes down to. And we've talked about this a lot on our show. I am anti-Zionist. I'm a recovering Zionist. I'm second generation Jewish South Floridian. My great uncle physically built the original Young Israel in North Miami, like old school. And we were brainwashed and we were lied to. And I was used as a tool in ethnic cleansing by high school in Israel. And you want to talk about what human shields are? Human shields are when you take a group of students, brainwashing them, lying to them, and bringing them into the West Bank and having them plant trees. That's human shield. Settlers are human shields. You want to talk about a human shield? That's a human shield. So I do have a very strong position on this because I was personally brainwashed for the better part of 40-something years by the state of Israel. So, I mean, not the state as a whole, but by the propaganda machine. And so for me, when I look at anything coming out of there, I don't believe a word that comes out of them at all. Not one. And when anybody questions the word of the Palestinian Authority or the health ministry in Gaza or whatever it is that they're questioning, I don't know whether they're telling the truth. I don't know the answer to that. But I sure as hell know Israel's a liar. So based on that, they have no credibility to me. So I'm never going to believe them. That's just the fact.
How do you see it, Loner?
I definitely don't see it that way. I can see how people who are describe themselves as anti-Zionist might get called anti-Semitic unfairly. I guess the problem is that people use the word Zionism. Some people, when they say it, they really just mean like pro-Netanyahu or pro-Israeli right. When other people say it, they think it just means like Israel being allowed to exist and like at least within its current borders, and it can exist alongside a Palestinian state. That can be a Zionist position. Some people think it means Israel conquering the entirety of historic Palestine. Some people think it means, I've heard people say that like one state solution for two people isn't incompatible with Zionism because Jews would still have self-determination in a binational state. So that word, I don't really know, but I guess as far as the most well understood definition, I think, although it's not the same as Judaism, the Venn diagram between Zionism and Judaism is pretty close. Most of the world's, most like Jewish people in the world have at least some connection or some sympathy for the state of Israel. So I guess that's why when you're attacking Zionism, you are kind of attacking like an opinion that most Jews hold to some degree, right?
Yeah, it's my mission to destroy that. Because Judaism has been around a lot longer than Zionism, and it'll be around a lot after. It'll be around long after. Zionism is a failed white supremacist settler colonial experiment from Europe. It has nothing to do with Jews. In fact, they used the Jews to create it, and it really only services white Jews. So the Mizrahi Jews, the Sephardim Jews, those Jews are not treated the same in Israel, never have been. It's a white settler colonial state. In fact, the Palestinian Jews that existed there and lived side by side during the British Mandate, they never had a problem with anybody there. It wasn't until the white settler colonial state came in and tried to take over the indigenous people like we do everywhere else. So Zionism is really this idea that Jews are an ethnicity and deserve their own state as an ethno-state. I do not support the idea of ethno-states because in order to have an ethno-state, you have to conduct an ethno-cleanse. And that is just not something that I'm with. The fact that Jews are threatened by the phrase from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, is a projection of their own genocidal tendencies and fears onto people that just want their own freedom. The fact that one group's freedom to some people interprets the annihilation of them, That's in their own head. I suggest they get some serious psychiatric help for it. But one group being free, if that threatens people, then something's wrong with their program. If you are threatened by another group's freedom, you need to really examine that. Okay. And that's the problem, is that you cannot have a Zionist state that is a democracy. It cannot exist. It is the antithesis of that, because it's by definition an apartheid state. There's two types of citizens.
And there's no justification, this isn't justifying what Hamas did. But as you've pointed out many times, one person's terrorist becomes another person's freedom fighter. If you did not, like, I look at it a couple of ways. Like, on the one hand, if you can't recognize that Israel is an occupied state, like, that is what it is by definition. And then in addition to that, there's also the financial motivation that is coming to the surface now, that there is trillions in natural gas value in Gaza. That, again, is that the reason that
Well, there were some leases given and granted and permits that were apparently given in June, July.
Mm-hmm.
Is that completely unrelated? I don't think so.
Well, that's why usually after the fact we find out about so much of this stuff, and then you realize that, oh, okay, so this was intended to happen all along. And then the other thing that maybe a lot of people are not either privy to or just not paying attention to is the fact that Netanyahu's government has been funding Hamas for years and years. And so there has to be, again, this whole conversation about nuance. What is the sensible reality here, and how do we come to a conclusion without there being a complete genocide of the Palestinian people? How do you see it?
Okay. I think I disagree with just about everything both of you said. I don't know how much you guys want to argue about it.
No.
We can. I took like 4 notes. Let's see. The claim that Netanyahu's government was funding Hamas is completely false. They were never doing that. Like, the thing that accusation, what it's based on, is a complaint that came from the Israeli right wing. What Netanyahu was doing was allowing Qatari aid money to go into Gaza through the Israeli channel. And his purpose of doing that was twofold. One was because the PA were in a fight with Hamas and they had frozen funding. And also because I guess he foolishly thought he could buy some silence from Hamas, which I guess he did believe until October 7th. But it was Qatari money that was going into Gaza, and it was humanitarian aid. So I don't know if I can see why an Israeli right-winger would get angry about that, because they think don't give Gaza humanitarian aid because it'll go to Hamas, which I think some of it might have. But that's if you look at the full context of that Netanyahu quote, it was humanitarian aid that was going to Gaza, not Israel themselves transferring their own taxpayers' money to Hamas. I don't think the only time Israel has ever given money to members of Hamas was pre-1987, back when they were a charity. So that claim is false.
We'll disagree on that. I've heard the audio recording of Netanyahu stating that they have funded Hamas. And again, there's probably, everything can be nuanced. There's a reason why he was clearly giving them money. But if that is the case, then wouldn't you say it's reasonable to assume that part of the reason that they are funding them is for whatever their political desires are, that whatever the Israeli state had in mind? Because it all comes back to the Palestinian question. If you want to have a Jewish state, don't you by definition have to remove the Palestinian people?
Depends, but you can be a Zionist and want a 2-state solution where the West Bank and Gaza, which again, the Israeli right doesn't want that. The Israeli right is probably okay with Hamas doing attacks because it keeps them in power and it keeps the West Bank and Gaza disconnected. But I'm almost, say, 99.999% sure that there's no audio recording of Netanyahu saying that they were funding Hamas. That's not true. I don't think.
I don't know.
Alan, if there's audio of I don't know where you would find it, but if you can look it up and see if there's anything there, I'd appreciate it.
I know nothing about that. But what I do know is that the concept of a 2-state solution was never really intended to be a real thing. It was sort of made up as sort of like this justification for colonialization. And interestingly, I forget, like this, and this is part of the problem when I do audiobooks, is that I can't actually go back and look it up. But if you get an opportunity to read Ilan Pappy's Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, highly recommend. But there was actually a renaming committee that was brought in to actually level things and rename them. And they actually, Jewish children that are born in Israel are raised to believe that things are ancient Hebrew ruins, when in fact they're 75 years old from their family, from villages being destroyed, right? Like, this has been a nonstop propaganda, very purposeful, intentional campaign. You got to put it back.
Yeah, so I know some of the Israeli government propaganda about 1948 is still quite strong. There have been efforts to move it away depending on who's been in government. So, for example, the reason we know about so much about 1948 now compared to what we did pre-1980s was because Israel disclosed their archives, right? Like, the surrounding Arab countries don't do that because they're dictatorships. So we know that because of them. We know that through like the new historians, people like Benny Morris and Ilan Pappé and Avi Shleim. But as far as you're saying that, like, Israel, there's this claim you're making that I think both of you said that Israel can't exist without oppressing Palestinians. Well, I don't know if they can't.
I will say it cannot exist as a Jewish state giving privileges to Jews over non-Jews as it is now, and be a real democracy.
Loner, would you say that that's fair? Would you say that there is a prioritization for Israelis over Palestinians
There's
in terms
like
of rights?
52 laws that are. It's just a fact.
Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that?
Yeah. So the problem there is, like, especially since the nation state laws, there are lots of like there's a lot of legal discrimination that happens, which again can be overturned within a state, right? You didn't need to abolish the United States to get the Civil Rights Act passed, right? So there could be things that are done and advances that are made towards equalizing relations between Palestinians who live in Israel and Israeli Jews. Yeah, I think that's very possible. But I don't think that Israel needs to occupy the West Bank and Gaza forever. They don't need to do that. They could, there isn't a conceivable future where Palestinians have self-determination within the West Bank and Gaza and Israelis have self-determination in Israel. Because the fact is, I mean, you say ethno-state, right? The fact is though, it's in the interest of both parties to be majorities in their countries, right? If Israel rammed their country full of Jewish settlers even further for the next 20 years, and suddenly the entire territory between the river and the sea was 80% Jewish, and Israel then said, okay, we're going to abolish Israel. We're going to be a one state. We'll even call it Palestine. I think Palestinians would be perfectly within their rights to reject that, because then they would just be 20% of the population. And then they wouldn't get their self-determination.
That's basically what happened over time. I mean, we've seen it happen over time. And the truth is that if Israel had any interest in actually allowing for Palestinian self-determination, they'd already have it. They had their Jewish state in 1948. They did. They had it. They could have given, and in fact, the Palestinians could have had what was that, and they could have shared East Jerusalem. And that was what they were supposed to do. That was the plan. But you know what? Pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered, but that wasn't enough for them. So then they had to go in 67 and now be sitting in violation of international law. And it's very hard for me to have a reasonable discussion about the legitimacy of a country when it just exists in complete violation of international law.
Wait, you're saying that was the plan to give them East Jerusalem and the West Bank and Gaza in what, before 67?
No. Well, no. Plan when the British mandate, when Israel declared itself a state in 48, the idea was that it would be alongside of a Palestinian state. That was always what the UN plan was. The plan was, and that they would share a neutral East Jerusalem.
Yeah, but the Arabs rejected that deal, not Israel.
In the very beginning, yes. In the very, very beginning, yes. But then again, they didn't say, okay, but in 67, let's encroach even further. And then since then, making it virtually impossible for there to ever be a Palestinian state by walls and highways and infrastructure. And, they've made it actually impossible. And I have not heard a single expert on this say that there is any possibility of having a two-state solution at this point, based on what Israel has been doing since 1967.
I think, settlements have obviously, just to be clear, I completely disagree with any settlements. They should never have started in 67. They shouldn't have, they annexed East Jerusalem in the 6-Day War. They shouldn't have done that either. I don't think I'm sure you could find a few people who say it's not impossible. Like you would have to remove some settlers, at least some of them, if not all of them. You would have to give land swaps for any settlements that do stay in Israel's hands, like the bigger ones near the Green Line. But I don't think it's impossible. I mean, if it is, it's still more possible than any alternative I've ever heard.
Every year it's proposed, and I forget the exact thing that it's called. It's something to do with the UN. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So every year it comes up. And every year Israel rejects it. So I agree in the beginning, in 1948, the Palestinians were definitely not keen on them taking the majority, and they were not hip to that. But since then, there have been many, many opportunities where the Palestinians have come to the table and wanted to be taken seriously for negotiating. And Israel and the United States have done everything they can to make it so impossible since then. And that's just what I mean, and maybe in theory it could be done, but look at Israel. Do they seem like they're wanting to retreat? Do they seem like they're wanting to give up power? They're annihilating the West Bank right now. They're giving settlers military arms.
Loner, do you see any, do you agree with the sentiment that the IDF is indiscriminately murdering civilians?
Indiscriminately murdering? No.
You think that they're targeting Hamas and the civilians are just in the way?
It's just collateral damage.
No, it's between. That's somewhere in the middle. At least based on the most recent thing I read about it. It seems to be the case that they are picking targets, so it's not indiscriminate. Indiscriminate would be Hamas rockets. They're indiscriminate. You can't aim them. As far as Israel's going, it seems to be the case that they are picking targets. They used to, as far as I know, I don't know if they still do anymore, they used to, at least in previous wars, go by what was quite close to American and European standards, which is like, there are some targets that no civilian death is worth it. There are other targets that are worth like 4 or 5, others that are worth 14, 15. Maybe like a very high profile general is worth like 30 collateral damage civilian deaths. It seems to be the case now that they're a lot more tolerant of collateral damage, and they're also doing this thing where they attack, which is called power targets. Like the idea that they will.
It's indiscriminate. I think you're right. There's nothing indiscriminate about it. I think it's extremely purposeful, which is why it all falls within war crimes. Interestingly, currently Joe Biden and Anthony Blinken and Lloyd Austin are being sued by the name of the organization. I can't say the human right, whatever.
As far as I'm concerned, it started with George W. Bush, Donald Rumsfeld, and of course Dick Cheney, who should all be in The Hague, as far as I'm concerned. But there's a hell of a lot of people in power positions here in the United States, now our president as well, as far as I'm concerned, who frankly could just go join him, because our business is war. Our business is endless war, and they have no intention of this thing slowing down. But if you had the authority to bring this to a solution, let's say, what would it look like from your perspective? Because right now, this is absolutely insane what's going on, but something's got to give.
Right now, I would have given a very different answer, just depending on different stages of the war, or even before October 7th. But I guess right now, unfortunately, and I don't like this, it seems to be the case that they've reached the point of no return. I don't think any amount of pressure is going to get them to ceasefire now. That you've got like supposedly Hamas people surrendering quite a lot, and they're as far as Khan Yunis. The only town next is Rafah. So I think they're going to be there until Hamas have completely lost control of all of Gaza, and then there's going to be an insurgency. So I think, if we're on this path, and if they can make sure that Hamas loses control over all of Gaza, and someone, I don't know who, decides to reoccupy and rebuild, then if we reach that point, and if Israel succeeds in what they're claiming they're going for, then they have no more excuse. They need to make sure there's some kind of consolidated Palestinian Authority that has control over both Gaza and the West Bank, that Palestinian polity is actually connected, because you can't have peace with 2 separate people running Gaza on the West Bank. You can't do that. You can't negotiate that.
But, that's why they did that, right?
Well, I wouldn't say Israel did that. I mean, they had the Palestinians had an election, and then there was a war. Israel had a part in maybe like picking a side, but I don't think. In any case, if that excuse is gone, there is no more excuse, right? So Israel will have to aggressively pursue peace with an empowered Palestinian leadership, free settlements, start to clamp down on settler crimes, dismantle the settler outposts that even Israel considers illegal, and then just try to push from there. I think like as soon as if they actually achieve what they're going for, which is I think the only good scenario that seems to be the case is actually if they get rid of Hamas, then all the pressure needs to be on Israel to start to extend that olive branch towards peace with some Palestinian Authority. That's what I think.
So you don't think that there will be, you don't see Hezbollah or Turkey for that matter being drawn into this?
If they're smart, no. I think given Nasrallah's speech, it seemed to be the case that their strategy is to do just enough to make it look like they're doing something to the rest of the Arab world. I don't think, maybe also to keep the IDF a bit busy to make the attack on Gaza harder. I saw a warning from Israel a couple of days ago where they were threatening to go into Lebanon if Hezbollah didn't go north of the Litany River. I don't think Netanyahu is that stupid. He is quite stupid, but
desperate.
He might, and if he does that, then that's going to be I don't even know where we go there, because Israel failed massively to get rid of Hezbollah in 2006. That was like one of the biggest humiliations ever. Yeah,
they're way bigger now.
Yeah, and they are like Netanyahu is definitely Orientalist enough to think that, oh well, we handled Hamas okay and they're Arabs with tunnels.
Right.
Hezbollah are Arabs with tunnels. Maybe we can do it this time. But I think what's more likely is that Hezbollah will fire pot shots. They'll ramp up rhetoric. They'll put up propaganda videos. They'll make it look like they're doing something, but I don't think it's in their interest to do something.
It's in nobody's interest to be doing any of this.
Yeah, well, yeah.
That's the thing. Other than the military-industrial complex, it's in their interest and their shareholders. It's in their interest.
Would you say for the most part, though, that war should always be the last option? That you are on board with that sentiment? That we...
Yeah, I would apply that on both ends. I think October 7th was, I mean, if people call that freedom fighting, it's pretty bad, right? What do Palestinians gain from that? And Iran is happy to fund organizations that do that, and same with Hezbollah, and Qatar. So, yeah, it's it's definitely wasn't a good path to go down.
Yeah, I mean, my thought is that was definitely a terrorist attack, no doubt about it. But this is not a war. And the reason it's not a war is because it's not like there's two sides. Like, I know that the media wants to portray this as Israel versus Hamas. First of all, you're not beating Hamas. The leaders of Hamas aren't even in Gaza. Okay. Hamas is an ideology. There's several branches of it. You're not just going to get rid of it by leveling Gaza. That's silly. That's their excuse to manufacture consent. If they were really interested in dealing with that, that wouldn't be the way to do it. I would also suggest that what if those fighters went and hid in hospitals in Tel Aviv? Would the strategy be the same? Would your thoughts on collateral damage be the same? And I know for a fact it wouldn't be. They value Israeli lives infinitely more. It's been clear forever. I was taught that actually as a kid. We were actually taught that they were lesser. So that's how I know that the mentality is there. But at this point, it is very apparent to every expert on this subject that they're conducting a genocide. And every single expert, every international organization, people that studied this for their lives have been saying that. And yet we're still arguing about October 7th, which was horrible. And I acknowledge that that's horrible, but this is not self-defense. This is a genocide because the people, you can't be at war with people in a cage. Okay, that's like saying that in the slave rebellion, we were at war with the slaves, or the Warsaw Ghetto, we were at war with the Jews in the ghetto. That's how absurd this is. If you could turn off the water to the other side, we're not in a war. We're in an occupation. So the fact that this is somehow becoming like a self-defense thing is so absurd that I just can't believe people are buying that.
Yeah, and then of course the problem becomes you have the Palestinian people who really don't have any resources, and whether the argument is that Hamas is basically hamstringing them in the process, and Israel is again it's like it's like the left side of the right side. It's like where were people supposed to go at the end of World War II?
They were invaded. You absolute my American. I'm a nitwit. They were invaded.
Stop worrying about what the chat says.
They were invaded. You mean their slaves escaped? Because people that are born in a concentration camp dare to want to get out?
Loner, would you agree that the Palestinian people are occupied? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, they're occupied. I wouldn't compare it to a slave revolt, though. No.
Well, you're right. more like a Warsaw Ghetto. It's more like the Warsaw Ghetto.
No, it's not like a Warsaw Ghetto. In the Warsaw Ghetto, the people who were prisoners there were on like what 70 calories a day, and they were fighting because they weren't killing civilians. They were fighting against Nazi officers who were going to take them to a death camp. And their choice was either kill them, was either die fighting or die in a camp or die in a chamber.
By any means necessary, man. People are keeping you captive. Shit, I want to know the people that think, because the reality is that what everybody that wants them to just go away and be quiet thinks they should just shut up and take it, or blame them because in 2006 there was an election which most of them weren't even alive for, in which Hamas was put there, as if their options were so significant as they're kept in a cage.
Well, what do you?
It's just so absurd.
What do you think that the Palestinian? What do you think the Palestinian people should do? I mean, they are basically boxed in. Like, they don't have the luxury or the option. You know, we've heard the stories countless times about, well, why won't they just go over to Jordan, or why won't they just go over to Egypt? And it's this whole like, well, first of all, why should they have to leave where they are? That's number one. And then number two, why are we debating this issue of why the Palestinian people are being treated as lesser than? I think you can agree that while there isn't a justification for Hamas, we have to be able to identify how Hamas gained power and strength in any capacity. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of my videos was about how Hamas gained power basically off the back of the failed peace process. As far as Palestinians, what should they do? I think it was the question you asked me. I'm not like, as far as occupation goes, I'm not anti-violence. Okay, like, it's a military occupation. There's going to be violence, whether you like it or not. I just think there's a difference, obviously, between what Hamas did and say someone like the kind of thing I advocate for, because it seems to work and it also seems to be a lot more morally correct, is what people like Nelson Mandela did. Right? Nelson Mandela was described as a terrorist, but if you look at his actual actions, he made a very specific policy with the ANC of avoiding targeting people and instead targeting infrastructure. And they did that for two reasons. One was because they wanted to destabilize the apartheid regime to make the country impossible to govern in that form. But the reason they didn't target people was because after the fall of apartheid, what they wanted was a state where the black and white population could live together in peace. That's what they wanted. They didn't want to basically leave a whole bunch, like 100 years of bitterness and trauma. So they even reprimanded people in the ANC who did target civilians, and people who tortured political opponents. They were against that. So I feel like the idea with what Mandela advocated for, that's like the kind of violence I would support a lot more than what Hamas did, which was like, again, Palestinians didn't want what Hamas did before October 7th. Before October 7th, the most recent poll was that people in Gaza, 60+% of them, wanted the ceasefire to stay in place because they know who gets hurt when Hamas strikes Israel. They do.
I would agree with that.
Of course they know. The lawn gets mowed regularly. That's what they call it.
Yeah, no, they're just, well, listen, at the end of the day, and I think we can definitely conclude this topic on this note, the Palestinian people are collateral damage. Pure and simple. Like that is why it's become such a watershed moment.
I don't know why you think they're collateral. I think it's intentional.
No, I know. I'm saying that because of between the two, that's just, you know, the whole thing is that they're not safe no matter what they do.
No, they've been wanting to get rid of them
just
since
been boxed in all the time. So, Loner, where do you see politics going in 2024, especially in the United States? I mean, we've covered a lot of different candidates that have been running for president. We were lucky enough to have Dr. Cornel West on recently. We've been trying to get RFK for a while. Obviously, there is nothing to talk about as far as I'm concerned regarding Trump and Biden. We would love to be able to evolve politically. You happen to live in a part of the world where you actually do have options. We don't. A parliamentary system, I'm not sure how well it would work here in the States, but anything different than what we're dealing with now would obviously be ideal. How do you see things ultimately unfolding here as we go into the new year?
I really worry about America because it's so strange to think that you have like one half of the country almost that denies the previous election in a modern democracy, and that you have the next president could be serving like as a convicted felon, or it's just so crazy. And also like the president might be a guy who previously tried to overthrow the previous, like the government, right? Like with the October 7th, with January 6th. So it's like, it does really worry me. I think Biden and the Democrats, although I lean further left than them, I feel like they've managed to achieve a surprising amount with a 50-50 split in the Senate. Like when they had infrastructure, there were different states that have managed to introduce like free breakfast for school kids and like little incremental stuff like that, that actually, I guess for normal people does make quite a big difference.
I would
Biden's popularity is dropping pretty bad, and yeah, it's kind of worrying. Like I don't want Trump to be president.
I would definitely say at the federal level, I think the Democrats are just as bad as the Republicans. However, if you look at the state of Minnesota, and I think that they're a great example, if you look at what the Democrats did in the state of Minnesota in terms of the policies that you just alluded to, like free school lunch, among other things that they were able to pass in terms of wages, in terms of health benefits and things like that, they did an excellent job. And to me, the upper Midwest Democrats are the best type of Democrat we have in this country, as we saw with UAW in Michigan. That's where the labor centric part of the Democratic Party is still somewhat alive. I won't say it's strong, but I would say it's alive between Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, places like that. There is still some semblance of we care about workers and we want to try to make things better. Granted, it's never been super strong since the days of Reagan, but we are fighting back against this now. Now, I did want to highlight this one comment that Mirusti had mentioned. How would RFK be better than Biden? Well, there is one significant issue that RFK is campaigning on that I actually think means a lot. And I think RFK is going to be a threat. I don't think he's going to win, but he's already polling near 25%, and that's pretty serious. So what I would say is this. He's been campaigning consistently on this idea, which I agree with because I happen to be in commercial real estate, is that we have these private equity behemoths in the United States. And I'm sure that there are issues with any of those major corporations in Europe as well. The ones in particular would be BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. And basically what they're doing here in the United States is buying up all of our single family homes. They are not just owning apartment buildings and all forms of real estate, but now people in, let's say, the millennial and Gen Z generation, you're making it nearly impossible for them.
They'll never have generational wealth.
You'll never be able to build it because all of the mega corporations are buying up in bulk. And this is a big thing here in Florida where we are, that they were basically allowed to run roughshod during the pandemic, and it hasn't slowed down.
They own everything here.
And then on top of everything else, we don't build anything here. Like that, we've outsourced so much stuff that when it comes to any type of home construction, the permits take forever. The raw materials are overly expensive and they take forever. And so in the process of trying to get people into homes and being able to, let's say, get a mortgage, our interest rates are very high right now. So that makes it even more difficult, to, let's say, get a low home interest loan. Those types of things are preventing people from being able to build wealth. And the only person who's running for president right now who's talking about this is RFK. And that to me is a big problem. That any of the other candidates, whether it's the two major party candidates or any of the independent or third party candidates that are running, none of them are talking about this. And to me, economically speaking, this is a very big deal. Your thoughts?
I guess the problem with America is that third party never wins, right? So, I mean, at the very least, I think I don't know much about American economic policy, but I think I know recently I read that in 2008, this year, U.S. manufacturing jobs were at the highest they'd been since 2008. So I don't know. It's going to be Biden or Trump, and I'm just hoping for Biden. Yeah.
Well, here's what I could tell you that's also a misnomer about that particular stat that a lot of people will not admit to, but it's a reality here in this country, just like Biden likes to overinflate his economic numbers. One, it doesn't account for wages. It doesn't account for people who have stopped looking for jobs. It also doesn't account for people that have multiple jobs, and they're counting it as more than one when they're doing the economics reports. And that is a big problem. We are a country right now that has the biggest wealth gap that we have probably ever seen in the history of our country, going back to the Gilded Age and beyond. And so when people can't afford the basic necessities, whether it is their groceries, whether it is the ability to purchase a home, we have a huge problem here. And even though one wants to say wages are up, and yes, Brian, wages are up, but they're not meeting.
They're still not a living
cost.
wage, so
Can't
it doesn't
beat that.
matter.
So when everyone says that, oh, the economy's doing great, did you
No.
see how the stock market is doing? That's not how you measure it. You measure
That's
it.
how rich people are doing.
Yeah, you measure how is the working class, how is the labor class, how are they doing in the United States? And unfortunately, because we really don't have the ability to collectively bargain, because we have endless amounts of debt. I mean, think about it. I don't know what it's like in the UK, but I'm going to imagine that it probably costs a lot less to get an education where you are versus what it is here.
Again, don't know that much about American economic policy, but I guess when I think about saying that we get small wage increases, but it's not a living wage, it's like, yeah, I'd rather a living wage. I guess the problem is you have to accept that you live in a democracy where you got a 50-50 split in the Senate, and especially when Republican policy is just to block everything, right? You do get kind of stuck there. And I suppose having been a minimum wage worker for a few years when I was quite young, like a small wage increase can change it does help. Like it definitely, I'd rather have it than not have it. Inflation, I think it was down to 3% this year at the very least for America. In the UK, we had an inflation crisis rise so bad that we had to change prime ministers a couple of years ago, or last year. Yeah.
No, I definitely agree, and I do think that there is no clear-cut solution to all of the problems that we're talking about. You know, what we have been trying to do on this channel for the better part of 3 years is transform politics into service. That is our mission. That is what we've always tried to set out to do. We believe in the labor movement. We believe that overall, this country can be really great, but we happen to have a top-down system where the people who seem to be pulling the levers of power on both sides, you can definitely argue that the GOP is worse for sure. But when you're completely captured by corporate special interests, when you're talking about Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and so forth, the money and the power is so insane. You're talking hundreds of billions of dollars, and you're talking about some politicians you can pick off for $50,000. Other politicians may cost $1 million. Whatever. It's a drop in the bucket when you get what you want to get. And so can things stabilize? Maybe, but I think you know how you mentioned we've reached a point of no return with Israel-Palestine. I think we've reached a point of no return with our current economic infrastructure. I think it has to change dramatically. How that's going to happen, I don't know. I don't want us to have to head towards a revolution, but you can only squeeze people so tight for so long before they explode. And that's my fear. That's what I worry is happening right now. Again, like you said, you're not as well versed in American politics, just not like we're not as well versed in European politics. But that's why I think these conversations are very important, because I think it's important that we do know what's going on in each other's backyard, because ultimately politics is global as much as it is local. And we always say everything starts at the local level, but at the global level, it is important that we recognize where we can bridge this divide. And look, I hope you've found this conversation to be, even though we obviously have strong disagreements, I hope you have found this conversation to be as fruitful as we've found it, because I think it is necessary to converse with people that you disagree with, bringing the whole conversation full circle from the beginning. A lot of times people just want to talk with people who they completely agree with. They don't want outside voices. They want to, have that safe space to just always feel like they're right and the other side's wrong. But I do think that these conversations are essential if we're ever going to get anywhere. That's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, I love arguments, so it turned out better than I expected, actually. Yeah, we never even got to Ukraine, but yeah, no, it was good.
No, we can, you know what?
See, it's funny, and I have no interest in debating or arguing. Never have.
Okay.
And what's interesting is so I'm a litigator by trade. Like that's what I went to school to do, and that's what I did. But that wasn't why I went to school. I sort of landed in it. But the reality is, I don't want to argue. I don't want to spend time convincing people. I put information out, and if people are interested in it and they're receptive to it, great. And if they're not, that's for them to deal with. But and I also loathe labels and people trying to put me in a category, because I really am not. And I don't do isms. I don't do isms. I do Jenism.
Well, you know what? Let's conclude with obviously what just happened the other day. I mean, of course, President Zelensky met with President Biden. He met with the defense contractors and all those people. But how do you see the situation in Ukraine now, being in Europe, and how do you see it ultimately concluding? Obviously, Israel-Palestine is sucking most of the air out of the room, but this is still a serious issue that is taking place in Eastern Europe. What are your thoughts on that and how it ultimately does wind down, if it can, in the near future?
How it winds down, I mean, it's a lot less hopeful than it was last year. It might be the case that they're going to have to give up at least Crimea in exchange for some kind of like resolution, but that's quite a sad thought because that's going to be horrible for the people who live there, especially the Muslim minority. But as far as with America, I guess you were talking about Biden and Zelensky. I think it's really sad because I think getting the Russian military out of Ukraine is probably the most 100% just cause for American foreign policy that they've been involved in probably since World War II. And it's such a shame that American view on foreign policy and intervention is so poisoned by the failures in Iraq and Afghanistan that people are starting to see Ukraine in a similar way, even though it's a completely different situation. And the fact that we're already starting to put the brakes very likely on aid to Ukraine when it was it's reached like 100 billion. It's like less than a 20th of what was devoted to Afghanistan, which was a completely lost cause. I don't know. I know quite a few Ukrainian people and I'm really worried about them because I don't think a lot of people really appreciate what Russian occupation of Ukraine actually means for the people who live there. Like, it's not good. Like Russia is like the closest thing we have right now in the world, I think, to like a fascist imperial state that's like properly doing old school bulldozing through a different nation of borders that they previously recognized to try and make it part of their own country, moving in settlers, renaming they're doing all this stuff now, torturing people, throwing people, like you have like activists in Crimea opposing the occupation, and then 2 weeks later they're found in a forest with their eyeballs gouged out. Russia in Mariupol, I think it's potentially the case that the civilian death count might be up to like 75,000, and we can only assume that just based on the amount of the growth of mass graves around the city. They're being captured by aerial photographs. And I think the problem is that Ukrainians are going to fight that with or without the West's help. It's just that without will be a lot harder.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I also think that we have I think the Ukraine situation is almost similar to the Palestinian situation. They are in between Russia and NATO. And I think that when you get right down to it, and this is my opinion, it's not set in stone, it's not law, but I've always maintained that every conflict that has ever been fought is always fought for money and power. And so Western Ukraine, as you know, is flushed with a lot of very valuable resources, and controlling all of these different areas, kind of like what happened with Nord Stream and so on. Everything is about, if you've ever read, I'm assuming most people that follow you and a lot of people that are politically astute have read 1984. It basically is three major countries, us, Russia, and China, that basically control the world. And you have these little proxies in between. And it's always a matter of, well, who's getting their hands on the valuable real estate? And right now, one is either seizing that opportunity or not. And unfortunately, there's a lot of collateral damage that comes with it. We do not agree regarding the current circumstance in Ukraine. I think this is something that should have ended at the very beginning. I know that there are times where it's kind of like in warfare, you accept that there are some battles that simply can't be won. And while you want to, obviously fight them off as long and as hard as you possibly can, and then the argument becomes, well, Putin's going to ultimately move into another country, Poland, of course, being the one that they are, circling on the map, if you will. I still believe that this is something that could have been avoided with diplomacy in one way or another. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm not. But all I know is that there are innocent Ukrainians dying every day that shouldn't be dying. And so that's where I stand. And if you disagree, I respect that. And Jen, any thoughts?
No, I mean, I'm against all of this. So this is very contrary to everything. I recommend everybody read Medea Benjamin's book called The War in Ukraine. It's a short read. It's simple. It really addresses, I think it goes back to really only since 2004. And then there was the Minsk II agreement, whatever, the more recent history of what's been going on there. But I highly recommend that people read that, because it's like everything else. Nothing happens in a vacuum.
Yeah. And by the way, everybody in the chat who are saying that we're wrong about war, you're more than capable of signing up and fighting on the front lines.
Go.
I mean, listen, please, if you really think that we're so terrible for thinking that we should find a solution other than killing each other, I'm sorry, but
if you're Jewish, the IDF will be more than happy to have you.
Yeah,
they'll even pay for you to come.
Dude, that video was crazy of them interviewing the different Zionists in the United States. So oh yeah, I'm signing up for the IDF.
Good. Bye-bye.
My goodness gracious me.
Bye-bye.
And so I do think that there's better solutions than endless war. Loner, obviously, most people give credit where credit's due. Most of the people that are here watching right now are obviously from your channel. But for those of you who may not know who you are that are on our channel, how can people find you and support your work?
I'm LonerBox on YouTube or LonerBox Live for the streams. Box Loner on Twitter, because someone took the name before I could. But yeah, that's my 3 main areas.
Absolutely. And listen, man, I'm glad we had this conversation, and I'm glad we disagreed, because I don't like to agree with everybody. I think sometimes healthy argument is a good thing. And I hope we can do this again in the near future.
Of course.
I think the two of you should enjoy that.
I think we can, but I think you're the reason we're here.
Yeah, but that's not my bag.
Well,
I don't want to argue.
Guys, go to LonerBox on YouTube, subscribe, check out his work. Remember, you don't have to agree with everything that everybody else has to say. It's always good to have healthy dialogue. We've had some agreements, we've had some disagreements, but overall, I think it was a very positive chat. And we certainly look forward to chatting with you again in the future, Loner. And obviously have a wonderful holiday season in the meantime.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. And you guys have a good holiday too, right?
All right.
Thanks, brother.
Bye.
Talk to you.
Bye-bye.
Guys, we're anti-war.
I will say this, something that really bothers me, and I hope that people that watch us, now we have a much smaller audience, but I hope that any of the people that regularly watch us, if you go onto other people's streams, I beg that you know better than to use straw manning. This entire chat was nothing but straw manning all freaking day.
This is a straw man response.
Right.
This is a straw man response.
Yeah. No, I don't say go die in a war if you disagree, but I do think that if you're not willing, let me finish.
I'm sorry.
But I will say that if you're going to think that we should go to war, that you should absolutely be willing to do it.
1,000%.
And that I don't think that's anything.
If there was one thing I would say to everybody in the audience who doesn't agree with our philosophy, with our sentiment, and that's fine. You don't have to. But I will say this. If you support war in any capacity whatsoever, if you support what Israel is doing in Palestine, if you support what Ukraine and Russia are doing right now to each other, as far as I'm concerned, go sign up.
Go have
it. Go fight it.
People are very quick to send other people's children to war.
Yeah, if you're willing to send other people to die, that's where the argument gets lost, and then it just becomes this. Well, if we don't stop them here, they're going to keep coming.
Because your principles don't mean shit if you're not willing to put something on the line for it. So there are things that I am absolutely willing to die for. I'll tell you something. There's a lot of things that I'm willing to fight and die for. Okay. And then if that's the case, then I will advocate for doing so. I'm not a pacifist. I don't think that everybody should just take everything and turn the other cheek. I don't agree with that. But I also know that our narrative in this country is purposely false. I don't know what news sources the majority of people on here watch, but I do know that if you watch mainstream media, you're reading stenography from the State Department. I don't trust a word of it. So we probably have very different news sources. I completely reject the idea that we put out misinformation. I do so much research. I spend about 3 to 4 hours a day doing research.
And she's a lawyer.
Okay. I don't get paid for this. I don't make any money doing this. I research into stuff. I find experts. I find authors. I have more than 3 years of content on this channel, bringing in some of the smartest, most academic people on certain issues. So do we get things wrong? Absolutely. But to suggest that this is all misinformation is just such straw man bullshit. And it is so not helpful to anything that we're trying to do. Why does everybody want to pick a fight about everything?
And Matt, if anybody invaded our country,
Then I would do that.
I would be on the front line.
Jesus, you're not getting the
That's
point.
the difference, man. That's the difference. Again, we're talking about useless military
He keeps on
engagement.
using a neocon argument. I don't get that to any extent.
Well, first
but
of all,
I'm not,
a neocon is somebody who believes that you can never have enough war.
right.
That
Neocons are
basically
usually
just go and bomb
warhawks.
the hell out of everybody, which is perfectly fine.
Generally.
Again, you don't like my music? Again, this is where we disagree. You and I have a different philosophy regarding how the war in Ukraine started, why it started, and why it's not ending and should have ended a long time ago. And we're never going to get to a consensus here. I am not here to tell you that the Ukrainian people don't have a right to defend themselves. They do, but they can't win this fight. It's not possible. The only way that this can get worse is if it becomes World War III, and it still could become that, just like what's happening in Gaza right now could turn into World War III.
It's never, they're not
Because
going to win.
No.
It's not going to happen.
Can't do it.
And if you want, really, we've covered this topic. We've had military people on this show. We've had experts on this show. Please feel free. I also do recommend Medea's book.
Here's what we've said, and we will say this again. This only ends when the U.S. and NATO decide that their encroachment is going to end. That is it. And if that doesn't do it, then you have your argument that Putin is just a completely reckless psychopath, which he may very
now
well be.
Now I want these people to. You know what? That's a straw man thing. When you,
It is.
it's called. You know what it shows me when people call names. When you label and call names, you're a Putin puppet. You're this. It's you have no concept of history and nuance. And which is why I don't like having these discussions.
Russia has had plenty of accountability.
It's totally their accountability.
But
they've won. It's done.
But you blew up Nord Stream 2, so that's gone. You have isolated them from most of the rest of the world. You've done that too. They are suffering in many ways. And again, this isn't a defense of Vladimir Putin. Again, it's like the whole thing when, we all want to talk about, is our elected representatives a reflection of who we are as people in this country? Well, I can tell you guys that our congresswoman is Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and she sure as shit don't reflect me and Jen.
No.
And you could say the same for the majority of people who are elected officials. They don't represent who the people are. Just like Vladimir Zelensky doesn't represent the Ukrainian people and Vladimir Putin doesn't represent the Russian people.
Can we screen our chat? Like, here's the thing. If you get your news from Fox, MSNBC, or CNN, please don't post in our chat. Seriously, it's just going to be stupid.
Colin,
can't.
Can you give me what I asked for, please? With the,
You're talking harshly.
with Netanyahu and what he said about Hamas. Okay, so there you go. Anyone who wants to thwart the establishment of a Palestinian state has to support bolstering Hamas and transferring money to Hamas. This is part of our strategy to isolate the Palestinians in Gaza from the Palestinians in the West Bank. It is what it is, guys. I just wish more and more people would understand.
Well, what's so interesting, and people want to talk about misinformation, especially like the Zionists, but yet none of them bother to do any research because the truth is they want to be willfully ignorant. They don't want to know the truth. They want to just call you names and straw man. But the reality is the information that is now available, it's very black and white. It's very clear.
So, but you know what Putin and Russia's terms are. They've made it very clear.
And by the way, a whole ton of people in Eastern Ukraine want that too.
Correct.
This is very nuanced. Again, what I would like is if you are someone who gets your news from CNN, MSNBC, or Fox, okay, I promise you're not getting accurate news, okay? And the talking points, which are very clear, they're just not, it's just not accurate. And you do not know history and you do not know nuance.
Jamie, I don't agree with you. I think that it's true for some.
Not here. We have like a 14% voter turnout. Most people can't vote because most people can't take time off of work to go.
I don't know how many people here are from the States or from other parts of the country, or other parts of the world, I should say. I'm sorry. But remember, this is very important. You have to remember that we have extremely low voter turnout. Our districts are heavily gerrymandered. It is a money game if there ever was one in this country. And so for people to get involved and to have a voice, it's very difficult. We ran a grassroots campaign against Debbie Wasserman Schultz in 2020. And that was a campaign coupled with the fact that we had the pandemic that made it more difficult.
Stop comparing Ukraine to Palestine. They are completely not related. We need to wrap, because this is not what I want to be doing right now. It just isn't. Please, neolibs, please kindly go back to from whence you came. We're clearly dealing with different news sources. You clearly want to call names and straw man, and I really don't want to do this. Not to mention I have to go pick up carpool soon. So I really just don't.
Anyway, as I was saying, we live in a country, and thank you, Pigeon. We appreciate that, and we're glad to have
Glad
you
you
here.
liked it.
You know, no, I'm sure a lot of people did. I am sure. Listen, for everybody that is here, you know, that is true. And Kitty, we respect your opinion, and we respect everybody's opinion. Now, if you want to troll us, that's
then
another story.
provide me better information. I agree, the gray zone is a good source. I know that the information I get is from people actually on the ground doing the work. So if you're not getting it from somebody directly on the ground doing the work, or is having the actual experience in which you are wanting information about, then you're not getting it firsthand. So like, I don't know, but if somebody wants to present me with other factual information that discredits things, then fine.
And here's a point.
But talking points and straw manning.
And here's a point, Notoriety. Whether you like WikiLeaks or not, and this is the same argument about, well, you know, they're cherry picking this information.
No.
The only thing that matters is the information true or false? That's it. It's like the argument about Julian Assange.
Then why hasn't there been any libel charges?
There you go. Why is Julian Assange literally sitting in prison as a prisoner for doing nothing but journalism?
If it wasn't true.
You don't have to like it. You can frankly hate his guts, and that's perfectly fine. But you know what? He didn't break any laws. He did his job. We found that information that, as Americans, we felt was necessary to learn about. If you don't believe that we have a right to know that our government is committing torture, if you don't think that we have a right to know that our political system, in terms of the electoral process, particularly in the primary process in the Democratic Party, is completely rigged, and you're seeing it now firsthand, then what is the point? Why would anyone? Oh, well, you know, he messed with the election, or he did this. Again,
Oh my God.
we live in a country, we live in a world where information, honest information, is everything, even if it goes against the people that you support or people that you like. And I've seen that happen many times before. But
The reason that Ukraine and Palestine are completely different, okay, is Russia does not have a concentration camp border wall around the perimeter of Ukraine and control their power, their resources, their water, what comes in, what comes out. They don't have that. It's actually two different sovereign nations. Palestine is not a sovereign nation. Hamas is not a sovereign nation. The disproportionate power is so ridiculous. And they're literally shooting fish in a barrel.
Notoriety, and you can believe that, and that's fine. And you can keep saying it, and that is perfectly fine. And he could be the most biased journalist walking the earth. And you know what isn't going to change? The fact that the information he provided is the truth. And that's it.
I can't anymore.
And that's all that
I
matters.
cannot deal with the neolib talking points anymore.
So,
I just cannot.
With that said, if you liked our show in any capacity, we appreciate it if you would smash the like button.
But if what you're looking for is
subscribe.
Neolib commentary, this is not the place for you.
No,
and honestly, it's not worth being here. We do not provide Neolib commentary.
Yes, and again, that is fine. And you're going to have people like David
bad
versus
evil
James.
Russians. Let's go get the evil bad Russians.
That's
I can't.
as I said, it is what it is. You're not going to agree with everybody, and if you guys,
I just cannot. I don't want to be condoning another friggin' Red Scare of nonsense, of bullshit.
Here's a big problem: 40% of Americans don't vote.
That's the thing.
And why do you think they don't vote? Because they have been led to the belief, unfortunately, as other people in the chat,
there's nothing good to vote for is part of the problem. There's nothing to vote for. Why would somebody want to vote?
People continue to vote for things that don't actually change their well-being, their ability to live and succeed.
Yes.
So when somebody says, well, the Republicans are worse than the Democrats, okay, so let's say that the scale is this high. It's this high. And this is the measurement. Here are the Republicans and here are the Democrats. You see the difference is a slight difference. And at the federal level, it couldn't be closer to the same. Now, at the local level and even at the state level, depending on the state, it definitely makes, without question, a difference, but a very, very small difference. And in terms of the overall quality of life that the average person has in this country, it doesn't make any difference.
Doesn't. And that's the truth. It's a very privileged, it's interesting. You would think it's the opposite, but it's actually, if you're in a position where you know the difference between who's in the White, like if you know the difference between who's in the White House, that's actually a position of privilege. Because the people that I know that are struggling and busting ass to just keep their heads above water, they will tell you it has not mattered at all.
And you know what, Karina? No one's saying not to vote.
Oh,
We
no,
absolutely
I vote.
You know,
I vote.
But understand what matters when you vote. Ballot initiatives are extremely important to vote on.
Stop writing in all caps. It's annoying.
Yeah.
It's the equivalent of yelling at me. I also don't care for that.
Well, a lot of people are yelling at you, and they would be if they could.
That's fine, but that's why I don't want to. That's why I don't want to debate it. I have my thoughts on this. If you present me with information, like if somebody said you're wrong on this, here's all this information. Please email it generationalchange@gmail.com.
Yes, if you have any complaints, guys, listen. If you really want to give Jen a piece of your mind,
Yeah, the only way you can communicate with me directly is through Patreon. And there are people that have actually, we've gotten a couple point out. We have a new person.
We do.
And I want to go up to our patrons. I want to give a shout out to someone who I somehow overlooked it. Clara, thank you. Thank you for being, because she actually had signed up before a guy speaking, but somehow I didn't see it. And so it got missed. But Clara, thank you so much. And your sticker will be forthcoming shortly.
David, if you think we're pigs, that's fine. We're glad you're here, because the fact that you're here just adds to the algorithm.
I don't get what that means.
He's not giving us any money, but that's okay. If you are inclined to support our channel, even if you don't completely agree with us or think that we're at least producing somewhat reasonable content, please go to patreon.com/generational change. For as little as $5 a month, you can become a supporter of our small but mighty channel.
No pay pigs. We make no money from this. We barely are scraping by to just pay somebody to clip our videos for us. I have not had a salary.
They live higher on the hog
in 4 years. So when we ask, it's helping us be able to do this, but I assure you there's no profit to be made here, unfortunately.
Anybody who donates $25 or becomes a $25 patron gets themselves the Generational Change silky smooth.
Oh, he didn't call us pigs.
Okay, I apologize, David.
But that's okay, because we're small. We don't have a lot of support, but what we have, it's very appreciated.
Thank you, Not the Borg. I appreciate that. And Rufio, thank you for always just checking in. And yes,
Rufio,
at the very least, if you can subscribe and hit the like button and click the bell,
forward it to somebody.
100%.
Share it.
It really does make a difference. And we're happy to engage. We're always happy to engage, but it does get to the point with some people who are engaging where you're basically just.
I am not engaging with someone who is not truly, genuinely interested in learning. If somebody's coming on to just call names and straw man and do whataboutism, that's not somebody who's truly wanting to engage and learn.
You see,
and I don't have
this type of commentator is not the person we're seeking support from. If that person thinks we're left-wing extremists,
oh my God,
that's fine. I'm
as dangerous as Trump in my message.
I'd like to think that the overwhelming majority of people who watch our channel, I think that they probably would agree that we are actually pretty reasonable people. Are we reasonable?
We're reasonable, but what's so funny, propaganda, left-wing shit. You mean talking about not killing people and trying to make people's lives better and uplifting labor. Mm-hmm. Yes, I could see how that's very threatening to you. This is why I don't have an ism. I don't want to be put in a box. Stop putting me in a box. And I'm always going to err on what is on the side of justice. Always.
Another person who has found himself being very troll-like in the chat.
Biden will win in 24.
Daniel, I am going to tell you right now, I will
fade into irrelevance.
I don't make a lot of guarantees, but I will say this. Joe Biden is not winning another term in presidency.
No.
That's not
First of all, I don't think he's going to make it. Yeah. But that aside, no, he's not winning. And
thank you. You don't like my music? I do appreciate that. I will take that.
Thank
I will
you.
absolutely take
That's
that.
a very good thing to say.
I will take that.
Yes,
100%.
we are not. Yes, I don't. Again, I don't fall into a box. But
well, be careful now. You go too far left, you're going to end up on the right.
Well, I actually have. It is more of a round. It is more of a sphere than a line. But when people are like, "I'll continue to become irrelevant," I never said I was so relevant. You're here watching me. You're the only person saying I'm relevant. So if you want me to be irrelevant, I would suggest not following. Thank you, Junior.
Yeah.
Because the truth is that I don't lie. I forget things and I make mistakes, but I don't lie. I can't lie. Because as somebody, and this is something my dad, also a fellow cannabis partaker my whole life, and something that he taught me a long time ago, is that if you don't lie, you don't ever have to remember what you said.
Yes.
And no, let me tell you something, sage advice for cannabis users. And so for me, and anybody who knows me will tell you this, I don't lie because it is way more mentally straining to keep up with misinformation and who knows what. I don't have it. I'm 52. I have two almost adult children, and I'm going towards the fun stuff. I like my cannabis. I don't have the wherewithal to sit there and make up shit.
So we're going to do one last thing because we have to. Okay. First, we've obviously gone off on a tangent here because we obviously have had a very.
But it makes me want to
chat
smoke
today.
a bowl because that was a total buzzkill.
You know what? I'll
I don't know that I want to give you.
Fine.
I don't know if I'm going to share my cannabis.
Fine. Go and do what you want to do. But let's conclude on a very high note here because
I am concluding on a very high note.
Yes, one of the best things that did happen today. Well, it actually happened over the week. Earlier this week. So for those of you who have been obviously sticking around know that we are huge supporters of labor. And because we're huge supporters of labor, we are also huge supporters of labor leaders who have the best interests of workers at heart. And one of those labor leaders happens to be Shawn Fain of UAW.
Oh, what a nice surprise.
Yes.
Oh, you had me at Shawn Fain.
So UAW is calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Here we go.
As union members, we know we must fight for all workers and suffering people around the world. We must fight for humanity. That means we must restore people's basic rights and allow water, food, fuel,
that's right.
humanitarian aid to enter Gaza.
That's right.
We must also call for the release of all hostages.
That's right.
I thank our UAW members for speaking out and pushing us to come out in support of a ceasefire.
That's right.
It was the right thing to do.
That's right.
So now it's time for the rest of our elected leaders to step up and do what it takes to end the violence.
That's right.
And I call on the rest of the labor movement to join us in this mission for peace and social justice for all of humanity.
I love him so. I do. I love it.
Firmware, thank you so much.
Oh, yes. And they can, and I know you mean save us, and it's true. And the fact that Shawn Fain, I know it's not just him, he represents the UAW, and he really is somebody that is in touch with the workers. But
and he meant save us, not same us.
I said save us. That's what I said. I know what he meant. But the fact that they're connecting the labor movement to the oppression of Palestinians is a huge first step in a long line of connecting links that we have to make to have a real revolution. You have to connect labor with other forms of oppression. That's huge. And that he's taking that step and putting that out there. And I don't have too much faith that other unions will follow suit. Unfortunately, I don't. But I still recognize that it's just a huge step, and it pleases me very much.
Danny, don't think we forgot about you. Thank you so very, very much for your support.
Danny probably wants Bernie.
So for those of you who are still here, who are new,
do we still have new people here?
I'll even donate as a 50 if Biden was going to give you another 50. Brian, you got to come up with something better. I mean,
By the way, do you know what we do?
No, excuse me. I'm here now. Listen, I have been listening to these really terrible people, and of course, I am going to remind these people right here, right now, it's very important that the second I get in, and remember, we are going to make America great again in 24. And you know how we're going to do that on day one? Of course, I'm going to be a dictator on day one, but only for one day.
It'll be so interesting to watch how you do that from a jail cell.
It'll be really great. No, listen, I'll have the most big, beautiful, important jail cell you've ever seen. I will have my desk. It'll be perfect. I'll give my executive orders from there. It'll be really great. And so what's going to happen?
What are you thinking about your running mate? Because people are starting to talk Nikki Haley.
I totally don't like that woman. She's a terrible person.
Yeah, but you know what?
I don't like
She'd be
her.
a great ticket for you.
She probably would, but it's my party, and
I know you will. You'll make some stupid ego-based choice, but the truth is, and I'm not a fan of you or her, but I'm just saying from a strategy, she'd be a really good pick for you.
Listen, the best idea I've had all day long, and I did it when I was on the toilet. I didn't tweet about it, but it happened on the toilet where it usually happens.
That's where Elvis died.
That's unfortunate. It won't happen to me.
Oh my God! I so hope that's how. I so hope that's how you go is on love the
You
toilet.
can't
Oh
kill
my
me.
God, I
You
so
can
love
only hope to contain me. That's all you
Oh,
can do.
you're gonna die in
Believe
the
me when I
toilet.
tell you.
And it's a
And
gold
so-
toilet. I know it's a gold
Well,
throne.
of course it's gold. It's 14
Oh my God, I
karat
so
gold.
hope that he dies on a toilet. That's
14
perfect.
14 karat gold, the best, the most incredible. And make sure, listen, I have always given really sound financial advice. I never lose, I always win. So I'm telling you now, invest in gold. It's a smart move, great move, tremendous move. When I come
Invest
back,
in
we'll take
gold.
care of everything. We are going to end this conflict between Russia and Ukraine. I'm going to take care of it. We're going to drill, baby, drill.
Oh God.
And I will declare myself emperor on day one. That's all I'm going to do. That's all that's going to happen. But it's going to be wonderful. You're going to really appreciate it all. I hope you're all enjoying this wonderful time here today. Having a really good time. Believe me, we'll be back. Make America great again in 24. Bye. So that's my Trump.
That's the Trump.
Thank you, Donald.
That's the
Really appreciate it.
Trumpus.
And can I say clean coal? There's no such thing.
See, as soon as, and that's a really good point, Teresa. Thank you for bringing up the Assange thing again, because
Yes.
anybody, anywhere, anyhow, making any argument in any shape or form, in any way to justify anything that has happened to Julian Assange, it's like, I'm done. I'm done. There is no thing you can say that is going to change that.
Notoriety, I know you come from Loner's channel. We hope you'll come back. We live stream on Mondays and Thursdays, either at 1 or 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Listen, Destiny's in Miami. We are more than happy to talk to him. Jen recently talked with Luke Rakowski and Clint Russell on their channel down in Miami.
I am happy to talk to
More
you,
than
but
happy to
I
talk to
don't
people.
debate. He might want to debate. I'm not debating. I have no
I think you
interest.
did a pretty good job today, just,
I don't,
considering the
but I
difference of
don't
opinion.
enjoy it.
Yes.
So that's the thing. Yes, I understand that I can do that.
Sure.
I did practice that. And so I understand I can argue. I don't enjoy it. It's a buzzkill. So I don't want to spend my mental energy doing that. That's why I stopped doing it for a living. I don't want to do that. So I don't want to debate people. That's not my thing. If somebody has good information, I'm always willing to hear it. If you join on Patreon, you can directly message me, and I do message back fairly expeditiously, I must say.
Yes.
To everybody through Patreon. So that's how you can communicate with me. And I'm always open to new information. That's not what I mean. But I don't need to have some sort of public spectacle debate with people and people try to get you. Like,
Well,
it's not, I don't enjoy it.
Jen, calm down. I'm here.
This is why I don't
I'm
enjoy it.
here.
It stresses me out. And I don't even want to talk to right
Well,
now.
look, unfortunately, I can't seem to get my story straight. On the one hand, I will not say permanent ceasefire.
I'm so
But
disgusted.
on the other
with you.
hand, I've decided to stand up to my good friend Joe and tell him that he's wrong, that he is not correct in terms of his assessment. This is not a good time for the American people. It's a very sad time, and a lot of innocent people.
Until the word ceasefire come out of your mouth, I'm really just not
Well, I have said
interested.
ceasefire. I said temporary ceasefire. Doesn't that count for anything?
No, it really doesn't.
No,
Bernie.
it totally
No, it
won't.
really
Listen.
doesn't. Because quite honestly, at this point, a ceasefire won't solve anything.
A ceasefire.
That's the problem.
No, look, we are in a very disturbing quagmire right now. It is an unfortunate time in American history, but we want everyone to understand.
Say the word genocide, Bernie.
Genocide. I
But
said it.
you've said it
I said genocide.
regarding what Israel is currently doing in terms of war crimes. Or
I'll get back to you on that one. But
Yeah.
I did say the word genocide. I said
whatever. You have
You
to say it
can
in relation to the context that we're speaking
You
of.
can completely take me out of context now if you want to do that. But I am here to remind you that Sean Fain is a great leader of the labor movement. He is doing a wonderful job. So make sure that you support your local labor organization. That is how you're going to make change here in the United States. It's up to you, not up to me. Remember, it's not me, us. That's what it's always been about.
Yes, you're right.
Thank you. I just wanted to come on here and clarify that.
But I'm very upset with you.
Oh.
So
Don't allow the chat to run roughshod over me.
I'll run roughshod. I'm so annoyed with you.
Happy holidays, guys. It's the end of Hanukkah. Don't you want to get into the spirit of the holiday? I guess she doesn't want to do that. But
No, but we are having Festivus.
And for those of you who want to come and hang out for a really fun chat, make sure that you are here next, not this Saturday, next Saturday. We are having the Festivus for the Rest of Us third annual show.
We won't be going live on Thursday.
Why not?
On the 21st? I guess if you want to do an afternoon, we could.
No, I would do Thursday because then we're not going to do a Christmas Day show unless you want to do a Christmas Day
No, but I'm
show.
having a
I don't wanna
solstice
do that.
gathering Thursday evening.
Okay, so then it would have to be in the afternoon.
That's what I just
Understood. So we will make sure of that. We've got some really great guests coming up.
Do you really think he has a resemblance to Sean Fain?
A little bit, maybe.
I don't know why you don't see it.
I can see it a little bit. All right, so last thing we're going to do before we go, let's have a little bit of fun. Of course, everybody's literally losing their mind right now about President. That's a Freudian slip, Donald Trump. But
No, he's
apparently,
still President
but
Trump.
apparently they're still convinced that he's coming back. So corporate media wants you to know that Donald Trump is going to end the world if he gets back into power.
Would a second Donald Trump term look like?
Well, he cannot be the next president. Because if he is,
you can't imagine the things that he's going to do. Mexico, Canada. We can't go to Canada because eventually Canada will become annexed to America.
And shoot visitors to the White House. Yeah, that means he can shoot the First Lady.
We're going to see violence, the likes of which we didn't even see on January 6th.
Make it illegal to run against him, to throw his opponents in jail, to shut down the media.
He will make himself into the Fuhrer, and he will make everybody raise their hand and salute him.
Using martial law against the American people.
Terminate the Constitution.
To rewrite the Constitution.
Create mass internment camps.
Throw everyone into Gitmo.
Might be sent to jail, or their rights might be suppressed, especially minority groups in society.
You might have any number of things happen to you and your family.
Every one of us, our freedom, our liberty, none of us is safe.
It's going to have people around him executing against an enemy's list.
Assassinate generals.
Ordering troops to attack American citizens.
Trump's very well-armed and extremist base will try to kill people.
He's going to basically burn the house down.
He will unravel the institutions of our democracy.
Draw similarities between Mussolini and Hitler.
Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini.
Can I just say,
I am so tired of the Hitler and Mussolini references.
Honest to God, this is a fantastic video because this is what, honestly, again, politically neutral here, but if I'm the Trump campaign, I'm using this as an ad for Trump. If these are the people who are saying get as far away from Trump as possible, it's going to have the opposite.
Yeah, these are not good. These are not good representatives. These are not good surrogates, if you will.
No.
Mussolini
makes Donald Trump even more dangerous.
Wants to take away your vote. Senate and the House are immediately going to be paralyzed.
People will begin in their minds to censor themselves. They might say, well, maybe I shouldn't say this.
This is the end of democracy. Yeah.
I think that could be the end of our democracy.
But democracy is dead if Trump is reelected.
Cozy up to Putin that democracy will be at risk.
The absolute destruction of the Justice Department as we know it.
The Justice Department could be entirely transformed.
I am really concerned about that.
Every person who was associated with the attempted coup elevated in the administration.
If he's reelected, he will curb transgender rights.
The end of the rule of law.
Arrest political opponents. To persecute, not prosecute, but persecute his enemies.
Take a wrecking ball to the rule of law.
He's going to make the law. Everyone else will have to follow.
A vote for Donald Trump may mean the last election that you ever get to vote in.
To go after the independent and free parts of American civic life.
He would tear down our institutions.
Purge the government of employees.
Department by department effort to weaponize the powers of the government.
To use the military to quash protests.
Ridding the government of all democratic safeguards.
Junking American democracy as we have always known it.
That he would try to stay in office beyond a second term. That he would never leave office.
There's no question.
Trump is reelected, he won't leave.
Donald Trump will never leave office voluntarily.
And what that means is that everybody who wants us to remain a republic has to put every other thing aside and work together urgently right now to stop that from happening.
That was an awesome thing that they put together. So, okay. The major fear mongering is just so consistent across all stations there. Like the fear mongering of the end of the democracy. I don't disagree that Donald Trump has those tendencies, and I don't disagree that those things could happen. But I would suggest that every single one of those people, in their own way, has handedly contributed to the downfall of our democracy over the past 20 years so much that watching them, from whether it's Rachel Maddow or Adam Schiff or Hillary Clinton, these corporate whores who have essentially sold our country to the highest bidders are now trying to fearmonger you about Donald Trump. And again, Trump is gross, and I'm not a fan, and I do believe those things are all possible. Again, multiple things can be true at the same time. But it is such a concise propaganda attempt. It really reminds me of that one based on like weapons of mass destruction that they put together years later, which had all the talking heads in different boxes saying the exact same sentence that's read to them. And it's the same thing. It's such propaganda.
Yeah.
And by the way, we haven't been a democracy for a long time, Rachel.
And if you look at all of the people,
for a long time, we're an oligarchy thanks to people like you.
When you conclude with somebody like Rachel Maddow, when you bring on Michael Beschloss, when you bring on Lawrence Tribe, Adam Kinzinger,
those are
Jennifer Rubin, David Frum,
Lynn Cheney. Like, these are people.
Jonathan Capehart.
Oh my God. Those are the people responsible for the destruction of democracy at a much bigger scale than Donald Trump.
Claire McCaskill. This doesn't help you. This hurts you. This makes people want to vote for Trump just to spite you.
Yeah, Hillary Clinton's never a selling point.
Well, I was going to conclude with, and if you think bringing on Hillary Clinton as the coup de grace, this is why democracy's falling apart, you rigged an entire presidential primary. You did.
Where democracy falls short is things like superdelegates and, you know, Citizens United and all the insider trading and all of that. All of that is where we lost democracy. It was long gone before Donald Trump.
Nobody's saying that it can't get worse.
No, I said I think it could get bad. I absolutely
What they are doing is ensuring that it does.
Yes, that, and they're also convincing you that somehow that they are the alternative, that somehow Biden is that alternative. So on the one hand, I do agree Donald Trump is horrible and that things can get worse. But on the other hand, I sure as shit know Joe ain't the solution.
And when you look
so you know, that lesser of two evils thing, I'm done with it.
You had people on LonerBox's network that were in this chat. If you scroll up, guys, you'll see, because it's mostly our people now.
Yeah.
If you go up and you will see people in the chat literally saying
they love
Joe. Not only they love Joe, Joe's doing a great job. Oh, and when Joe wins, you're going to be an irrelevance. It's almost like we're going to be persecuted for not supporting Joe.
If they can drag his carcass over any finish line whatsoever,
at this point, it's getting so unbelievably bad.
He can barely keep his eyes open.
Why can't the fact that people wanted to, but that's the thing. We know what the statistical data says. The overwhelming majority of people, there are people that will begrudgingly vote for Joe if they feel that that's the only option that they have, but there's no momentum there. There's no inevitability there. All of that is gone. The overwhelming majority of people do not want him as president again. They don't want to vote for him. They do not like his policies. That's correct. They don't like his policies. So stop it. Listen, if there was one thing that LonerBox brought up.
Every single one of the people and every single person in that video is suckles at the corporate teeth.
Correct.
Every single one.
And if there was one thing that LonerBox brought up, that if we really wanted to get into a debate, we could have. LonerBox apparently likes,
he said he likes to argue. He said he doesn't even like, he said when I first asked him how you got into this, he said, I've come to realize that instead of putting things out, I do a lot better at attacking other people's things that they put out. That's how we started this conversation. So
what I was going to say is he really, he wasn't giving a tongue bath to Joe Biden, but he was suggesting that Biden was somehow a good president. And I don't agree. When he brought up the infrastructure bill is a corporate giveaway of the highest
It's a slush
order.
fund.
It's a slush fund. It's no different. Listen, if you want to...
Where's the infrastructure?
If you want a prime example, like of anybody who's defending what's going on in Ukraine right now and thinking that this shouldn't have ended a long time ago, Zelensky admitted that before he met with the president, he met with all the top defense contractors. Like, if that's not giving away the game, I don't know what is. Like, it's not.
That's who's in charge.
We live in a broken republic. And I wish more and more people would realize.
And but I just think, and again, I agree that Trump is bad and things could get worse. I am not delusional.
But you're not doing anything to make it better.
Right. It's happening. Like, we're on this downward decline and Joe's not stopping the boulder. So does Trump speed it up? Potentially. But if it's not stopping, it's not stopping. And I've always thought, like, he facilitates the revolution, and he does. I just wish that the neo-libs would take that energy that they have in the Trump derangement syndrome and actually allocate it to where they could do the most good.
There are people who are still on that train of, you better vote for Joe. It doesn't matter what Joe does because the other side's right. Now, how about maybe if Joe did his job, that would make things a lot more difficult for Trump to get into the White House again. And last thing, please, for the love of God, stop pretending that RFK is not running for president. The guy is polling near the mid-20s.
And they did make a good point that even if he's talking about things, that doesn't mean he can actually do anything will do anything about those
that's
things.
One of the things that RFK should be questioned on, because the truth is, if there was a cataclysmic shift and RFK somehow got to 30% and was in a path to actually winning the presidency, you better figure out what the hell you're going to do if something like that happens. What is the future of politics? Are we heading towards a situation where we're going to have a parliamentary plurality system? Are we getting away from the two-party system? Are we going to have ranked choice voting? Are we going to have open primaries? How about we take away the party labels during primary elections? There's so many things we could be doing to make this country better.
Yeah, well, again, I don't think there should be parties, but if we had open primaries and ranked choice voting, it would be infinitely better. That would help significantly. But in general, until we make people's lives better, we're never going to have high voter turnout, which means we're never really going to have fair representation. And it means that the corporations are still going to basically own everything, because regular people are just not engaged, because they are just trying to live and keep their heads above water.
I agree 100%.
So most regular people that are struggling don't vote, and it'd be easy to blame them for that. But yet I know better. And I know that most people are just like trying to just be able to keep their kids alive and not go into healthcare debt.
And on that note, Donald is absolutely right. It is most definitely can get worse. And regardless of it's Trump or Biden,
it's going to happen.
It's going to get worse.
The violence is going to increase.
Absolutely.
And the desperation is going to go. Like, it's not going to get better. Joe's not fixing it. No. He's just giving you an illusion that it's better than something else, and they don't hate gay people.
Correct.
I mean, and that is important, mind you.
But remember, the puppet masters at the top, the Wexners of the world, the Soroses of the world, the Kochs of the world, the ones who, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, those are the ones who control everything. They're the ones who move the economy. There are people that you don't even know that exist, that live on Palm Beach Island, that live in the San Francisco Bay
Area, that have more
area,
power than Joe Biden,
that have more money and influence, and you don't even know they exist.
Yeah, that's the truth.
So when everyone is out there pointing the finger at Vladimir Putin, and
well, he is a particularly large oligarch.
He is a particularly large oligarch, but he's one of many.
Yeah.
And there is, again, if you don't know who Klaus Schwab is, learn who that is. Learn that so much of the things that are done here, if anybody has not seen, if you haven't seen the movie Wall Street, and Oliver Stone is without question one of my favorite directors. He's been a wonderful guest on our show. We'd love to have him back again. But there is a scene, maybe the most important scene I've ever seen in cinema, that is in the movie Wall Street. It's not the greed is good speech. It's the speech that Charlie Sheen gets from Michael Douglas in his office afterwards when he finds out he's been had. And he basically explains to him that we control everything. Right. You think you're living in a democracy? And this was in the mid-'80s that this was happening. This was during the Reagan Revolution, before anybody really had a clue as to how bad it was going to get. Mm-hmm. But it is important.
I'll take that. I'll take a good comparison with Lee. He's good people.
That we understand it is a must-watch. And it really tells you exactly where we're at. And not much has changed. In fact, it's only gotten progressively worse. With that said,
thank you guys so much for
such an amazing
support today.
Yes, it's been an amazing support day. We thank you very much. Of course, Danny, Firmware, Donald, Teresa, you guys have always been great. And to everybody who's new, Notoriety.
You can't put me in a box.
No, you can't put us in a box. Left is Best, great to see you today. Multimind, Sable, Brenda, all of you guys. I mean, I can run through all of the names. Notoriety. I think Notoriety will be sticking around. He'll be back. Brian St. Pierre, great to see you. We really appreciate it.
What do we have coming up on Monday?
Cognition. We do not have a set schedule yet, but we are looking to have on State Representative Angie Nixon.
Yeah.
She will likely come on next week. Got to talk to Steve.
Would you invite Randy Fine on for a chat?
Yeah, right. Like he'll never come on. See, now that would be a debate.
No, that would be me losing my shit with him.
Okay.
It wouldn't be. See, that's the problem. This is personal to me, and so it's hard to be like not get crazy about it.
Not the Borg. Thank you very much for checking in, all of you guys. JD Party Hat, Rufio, David versus Games. Even though we don't agree probably on much. Super Snake. Thank you for coming on.
So we have no
JR Jr. with some really great conversation. Yeah, we'll come up with something.
Oh, I know.
We'll do a night show on Monday. Let's make a night show for once.
Who's playing Monday Night Football?
It's not the Dolphins. Oh. Dolphins play the Jets on Sunday at 1 o'clock. Giants play at Nolans at 1 o'clock on Sunday. Maybe we can meet up for football.
Why are we meeting up? We're going to meet up for football?
Maybe. Why not? Both teams playing at the same time, although we would have to probably go out to like a sports bar.
I don't know if I can do
that. Could be fun. And of course, you don't like my music. Always great banter. Always great to have you here. Ray J. Karina. Always happy to see you. Doom Sheep. It's great to see you all. And again, firmware, Jew, goes J-U-U for Jew. Okay, fair enough. It's been, like I said, a very lively discussion. You guys have all been great. Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those wonderful things we ask you to do. It's been one hell of a chat. We'll see you Monday.
Bye, all.